Hello and welcome to Just Onside on a gorgeous Friday in Blackburn. It's absolutely gorgeous. We're set for a heat wave for the next, I think, about 10 days away. So this is the place to be, Blackburn. How's uh, how's Dubai? Does it compare to Blackburn in terms of temperature?
Temperature, no. I heard, I think there was a report today saying that it's been the driest start to a year in the UK for the longest time. I'm not sure. But no, Dubai is just a different animal altogether when it comes to heat and what have you. I just went for Friday prayers pretty outside the mosque because there was no space. And let me tell you, it's getting hot out there. So, yeah, ridiculously warm. Should get even more insufferable over the coming months. But luckily, I had last year to get used to it. But I don't know if you ever get used to 50 degrees Celsius, but we shall see. But yeah, it does look like a bright morning. A bit of sunlight coming through your window. You?
Oh, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And it would help if you turned up to the mosque early to actually get a space inside. I mean, these are the things that people do to make sure they get a space inside. I
Fair
always do,
shout.
you know
Fair
me,
shout.
first in, last out.
First
Oh,
in,
is it the other way around?
first in, last out. Yes, yes, indeed. And you need time in the mosque, let me tell you. So,
I
indeed, yeah.
certainly do. I've got plenty of time.
Good stuff.
Let's not get there. Let's not go there at all. All
Yes.
right. Okay. We'll talking about depressing subjects. We'll talk about the Arsenal. It was, in a sense, it was almost to be expected. Quite a limp exit. And another year without any success for Mikel Arteta, who claims that Arsenal, I think, were the best side in the Champions League. Uh, Deluded, I think he is. But it's another season, another failure, I would sort of say. There's lots of comments as well from esteemed footballers or ex-footballers such as Paul Scholes. So, what is your take on this? Because I mean, I say that, and sometimes I jokingly say, but I think there is a serious element to this. That is Arteta the right man? You keep saying he is, but how many more years are you going to accept Arteta to be so close, but really so far? So, is the clock ticking? What's the Arsenal uh, uh, fans saying about Arteta? Are they still happy with him, or do they think it's time for a change?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've not canvassed any Arsenal sentiment, especially being thousands of miles away, in a sense, from I guess the
There's
club.
the internet. You can go on the internet.
No, absolutely, but I don't. I'm not sure that social media is a good forum in terms of understanding where
I take your point.
fan sentiment lies. Look, I mean, we'll get to that in short order. I'm sure you've got some strong views as well. Are you just you call it a limp exit? I mean, I slightly disagree. They started off obviously like a house on fire. Ayub, I should have scored. Let's be very clear. They should have scored in those opening stages. It was probably as good an aggressive start as an Arsenal fan could have hoped for, where Arsenal were very dominant in that first 7 minutes. And should have scored, definitely should have scored, found a way. I actually think the Declan Rice header was as good an opportunity as it comes, just simply because of his aggression, his height. I think it was against Marquinhos, but you just expect him to hit the target, and if it hit the target, you'd fancy it to have scored. Although Donnarumma was in excellent form again. But yeah, it was a great start by Arsenal. And I think if they get the goal, Ayub, obviously it's going to be a different game, isn't it? And I after the game, and we'll get back to the game, but I was thinking, what's my overriding emotion in terms of the game itself? So forget large picture, just about the games itself, the tie itself. And I felt like that, for the most part, Arsenal in the end lost this tie because they were up against an incredibly good team. That's first and foremost. You've got to be humble in victory, gracious in defeat. And second, I just felt that they lost all of the different momentum moments in the two ties. And when you do that, you're not going to give yourself the best chance of success. I think they had a 4.77 XG, so they should have scored close to 5 goals given the chances that they had. They scored one, even though that was somewhat fortuitous with the ricochet and then falling to Saka. Um, but they lost all the big momentum moments. You think about the first game, Emirates Stadium, it's bouncing, it's rocking, no doubt added to by the aware end of the PSG fans as well. But they score immediately just to quieten the whole crowd down. So Arsenal didn't get that kind of electric start that you want at home to put the other side under the pump, under pressure. They then obviously get into the game. You're thinking, well, if Martinelli scores or Trossard scores, that's going to set Arsenal up. But I think even you agree that if they scored one of those, they may well have gone on to win the game, to be honest, just in terms of the way the game would have panned out, the crowd, just the forward momentum. Maybe PSG would have thought a draw's probably in our favour right now. Let's just settle in. So they lost those big moments. You think about the disallowed goal, inches in it, in the first game with Marino's header. So those kind of critical moments they lost. And then when you think you come to PSG, they are the favourites. And if you get that goal early doors, and I'm talking super early doors, just like Dembele did in the first leg, you set the game back to a neutral point. Arsenal probably can then sit in a little bit and take the game very neutral and be calm and not be as open as they were in the end because obviously desperation starts to kick in. No doubt with PSG's confidence building as well. So not scoring in that opening stage, they weren't able to then obviously kick on. So I just sense they just lost all those big momentum shifts that you can get. Donnarumma obviously was in electric form. The only disappointment for me was I thought second half Arsenal didn't offer as much as they should have. They scored, but I was really expecting them for the first 15 minutes of the second half just to pour it all on. And to be fair, PSG broke the game up really nicely, played really well in that stage where I thought the game was won in the first 15 minutes of the second half. So there's that. So I think in terms of the game itself, don't necessarily agree with your assessment that it was a limp exit. I think they just came up against a very good team. I thought they were fairly well matched. Yes, PSG looked classy, no doubt. But I don't think Arsenal were outplayed, outclassed in any way, shape, or form. It's just when you've got two really good teams, one's unfortunately going to fall on the receiving end of a negative result. So there's that. I think just in terms of Arteta, I'll just touch on that quickly, and then I want to hear your thoughts, and we'll kick this around. Is I've said this to you many times, Ayub, about Mikel Arteta, and I understand that ultimately, when you're competing at the highest level, you are. I mean, you're going to be judged by the competitions that you win. That's what the great, very, very great coaches and managers do. But I think Arteta, I believe, gets to some extent a little bit of stick in the press, which is unwarranted, and I think somewhat irresponsible as well. Which is that this idea that because they have been coming up short and coming up close and short, I would say, in some of these big moments and big competitions. It's as though they are, for want of a better word, choking or bottling. Bottling it, as Paul Scholes put it. And the problem I have with that sentiment is you can't A, prove it. It's something that's in the ether. You can't really justify it. If you remember, we always speak about it. It's the first time I heard it in my life in terms of this sporting phenomenon, in terms of choking, was that famous Clusiner Alan Donald run out against Australia. You'll remember you famously, but that was the first time I was very young. I think it was the '99 World Cup. You'll correct me.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would have been 13 at the time, and it was the first time in my sporting journey did I hear this word of choking, of bottling, and then obviously do a bit of research. What does it mean? What does it entail? And all the rest of it. I don't think Arsenal's situation is that. I think ultimately they are competing at the very highest level. They've taken a step back in the league this year. But it's as though we sometimes forget this is the final four of the most premier competition in Europe. Barcelona were the other team that obviously exited the competition at this stage. Now, that was an incredible tie. I would argue maybe the greatest tie in Champions League
Mm.
history in terms of first leg, second leg, sheer entertainment. Um, Unbelievable. But they fell short. They fell short of what they came out to achieve. Now, I don't think that's a case of, well, they choked because you could make the argument, you that they were very well positioned after your mate Rafinha scored
Oh, yeah.
in the 86th, 85th, 86th minute with a great comeback. I mean, you could argue Inter Milan had that game dead and buried, and suddenly Barcelona come on strong. So what, did Inter choke it first? Did Barcelona then choke it? Because there's no doubt about it. If Barcelona just sit in tight, I mean, if you look at that last goal in regulation time, there's no reason Barcelona should be that open in the dying embers of the game. Makes no sense whatsoever. So these things happen at Premier level in terms of elite level competition. I thought Arsenal acquitted themselves well. The only criticism I would have of Arteta is that he could have handled that question better. Now, I agree the way the question was put to him was perhaps in terms of timing, post game, biggest game of his career. Let's be very clear. I'm going to cut him some slack. And I think most human beings should cut him some slack because at that point, emotions are raw. But I think he's wrong. I don't think it's the right time at that stage to say that they were the best team. Look, we had a greater XG, but I don't. Nobody cares for that nonsense at that stage. The fact of the matter is, the game is about scoring goals. Do I think that Arsenal were their equal in terms of open play? For the most part, I think for the most part, yeah, you can argue PSG might do it differently aesthetically and all the rest of it, but Arsenal had big, big moments. I think most people would accept that. But ultimately, you've lost, and I think that's the time to be fully gracious and say, look, we've come up short. Good luck to them in the final. I think he did go on to say that. I think in the end, but I think he's ultimately thinking, well, I've got to defend my club. and perhaps he went about it the wrong way. I think we could forgive him in that respect. So that's all I would say. Do I back him 100%? Do I want him to be the coach of Arsenal for the foreseeable future? I don't see an end in sight, absolutely, because quite often we think about, and I'll end on this, Ayub, we think as though Arsenal are somehow uh, deserving of winning Premier Leagues and Champions League when they haven't won a Premier League for 21 years, as though this is their destiny. This is what they're all about. They're not. They're absolutely not about this life right now. Where Arteta's taken us from is top eight finishes. See if we can sneak into the Champions League. Then getting embarrassed in the last 16 of the Champions League, losing to Barcelona fours and fives, Bayern Munich fours and fives. That's where Arsenal have come from. So let's not forget where they've come from. And this idea that replacing Arteta guarantees that that final 5-10% will be secured. No, it doesn't work that way. Quite often, what will happen is that you'll take two steps back as well. That's also a possibility. So, yeah, sign me up for more of this. Big games, big crunch games, Wednesday nights, quite bloody late on a Wednesday night for me. Sign me up for more of those nights because that's elite level competition at the highest stage, rather than irrelevant games being played on other days and what have you. So yeah, that's my kind of initial first stance. I've gone for quite some time. I'm okay with it. Disappointed, bitterly disappointed. No two ways about it. But again, you've got to try and be humble in victory, gracious in defeat. PSG went on to win that game. I'm okay with it. I think over the two legs they played well, really well. I don't think it was a smash and grab by any stretch of the imagination. So well deserving. Arsenal, I think, in my humble opinion, if they address some things, some shortcomings in the squad, there's no reason that with the way they play and with the coach that they have, that they can't be at this stage again, in my opinion.
I mean, you've summarized the game really well, and maybe what you're. I always sort of think that you're probably not the typical Arsenal fan. I mean, I've not been on forums, so I don't know what the consensus of opinion is, but I'm absolutely convinced now that there is some grumbling amongst Arsenal fans. I mean, a good friend of mine, Richard, and a regular contributor in terms of the comments. Richard, I'm absolutely convinced that you're watching this. So this is for you, Richard, a hardened gooner. You tell me what your thoughts are, and do you think Arteta should carry on the job? The reason why I ask is you're absolutely right. I think he is a good coach. What he's done, how he's transformed the club, but you've got to bear in mind that this club has been in a healthy state for a number of years. It's not the curve is not still going up. It's reached a certain point and it's plateaued. Uh, and somebody once said that you can work as much as you want, you can improve, but there is also this sort of 5%, which is known as luck. There are some people who are lucky, there are some people who are probably not lucky. I just sort of feel that for some reason, maybe Arteta is one of those managers that he'll work hard, he'll improve, but he just doesn't have that luck because you would have expected over the last 3 or 4 years for the Arsenal to have won much more than they have because they've been very, very close. We talked about choking, or you talked about choking as well. Uh, some people call it choking. Some people just maybe call it a lack of ruthlessness or making the right decisions. You're right. I don't think it's choke. Choking is where you perhaps have the pressure's been overwhelming. I don't think that's been the case with the Arsenal. I think it's just it's maybe they've perhaps just not been clinical enough, or maybe the luck. And this is where I just sort of think that maybe it's time just to sort of see, look, we're going to give there's plenty of good managers out there, really, really good managers. The good thing would be is that this team is destined for success. That's the thing. It's not as if somebody needs to build a team. This is a ready-made team. I think there's lots of quality managers who would be absolutely chomping at the bit. Uh, I just sort of feel that next year is going to be exactly the same, that they'll be there or thereabouts, they'll compete, but I don't know. There's just something missing which prevents Arsenal and Arteta to get over the line. And that's why I'm sort of saying that maybe it's time to say, well, look, maybe we just need somebody else. We don't need to change the squad. It's a wonderful squad. We can add to that, enhance what we've already got, but maybe just bring in somebody who perhaps will bring that 2-3% of luck, which is needed.
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand that reasoning. I just can't get on script with it because the fact of the matter is that after Arsene Wenger, and no doubt his last few years were tough, they went for Unai Emery. That didn't work out. Some might argue he should have been given more time, but I remember those performances in the second season with Unai Emery, and they absolutely were not of the standard that you'd expect. And also, don't want to be firing managers left and right. Now they've found a really good manager. You've said that they're not on this curve. They've plateaued to some extent, or they're primed for success. Yes, that's also because of Mikel Arteta. Now, have they spent money? Yes, but I don't understand why this idea that, well, he spent loads of money, so he should be successful. No, he spent loads of money, which has made them super competitive. That's what's happened. There's no divine right for Arsenal to be winning competitions and to be winning trophies. So would I feel great if Arsenal won a Premier League? Absolutely. Champions League, over the moon. Incredible achievement. But it's also because I want it for this manager. I want it for this manager because he's ultimately taken Arsenal back to the big time, back to big games, Wednesday nights, conversations where every time I refresh Sky Sports, the first story is Arsenal. BBC Sport, the first story is Arsenal. This is what Mikel Arteta's done for Arsenal Football Club. So there is, in my opinion, and maybe I'm getting sentimental in my old age, I want Arsenal to succeed with Mikel Arteta at the helm. So it's not a case of I can be secure in knowing that there may be more tougher nights ahead where it's Champions League semi-finals, knockout, maybe on penalties, Champions League finals, losing on whatever it may be in the future. But if it's with Mikel Arteta at the helm, he's the one who's brought us to this stage, and I think fans would do well to remember that. Now, I've canvassed a little bit of social media in terms of the X/Twitter pages that I check in terms of some of the accounts I like to follow, and for the most part, there's a lot of support out there saying he's our gaffer. And honestly, I genuinely believe in that. I don't think he's the reason why we're falling short. We're falling short perhaps because he may not quite have been, and this he does take some responsibility, not quite as ruthless as he needs to be in terms of the forward areas. You know, for without a shadow of a doubt, they're addressing that in the summer. Arsenal look tidy, look composed, look a nice outfit to watch. Although again, they're very cautious in some games, which is an issue that I've had with them. I think especially in the league, you've got to be, for the most part, embracing risk. But they need a little bit more speed. They need a little bit more, as I call them, game breakers, guys who can do stuff one on one, speed and precision. So I think they'll address that this summer. There's no doubt about it. Their finances are healthy. The challenge that they have is that at some point they're going to lose players that they don't want to lose. And when that starts to happen, that's going to upset the balance. Now, for the most part, they're bringing in Zubimendi from Sociedad. He'll be really good, in my opinion. He's a top player. Played the second half against England in the Euros final. There's talk of Gyökeres up front, maybe even Isak, although I think that's a harder deal to do. So I think Arsenal are showing the signs of we're going again. We're going to go again for these elite level competitions. And that's how it should be. If you're a big club,
Mm.
you should be fighting to compete at the very top. It's not a case of, oh, no, I think we've got enough if we do a bit of this and a bit of that. No, it's what you said about Leeds in terms of, no, in January, you would have liked them to have really gone out and made sure of promotion. They got promoted in the end anyway. So, no, I don't think it's a case of other managers are out there because ultimately I also think that'll take something away. Remember, he played for Arsenal. He played for Arsenal for many years. He has a connection with the club. He's brought this club big European nights at the Emirates, which absolutely wasn't the case. Remember, this is why they moved to the Emirates. The talk was we'll have amazing nights and all the rest of it. It took years for that to come to fruition. But here we are talking about Arsenal perhaps falling short of the very highest honours. I think it's just a privilege to be in that conversation. So let's see. What are your thoughts? I mean, I know you're not calling for his head, but do you think it's a case of, like you mentioned, a little bit of luck? Because you do need luck in some. I mean, those first saves, the Odegaard one for me, Ayub. I mean, the Martinelli's close in. He's put a hand out. The header's obviously off target, but the Odegaard one from a sea of bodies, of course, if it's a bit more in the corner, it's a goal without a shadow of a doubt. But for me, it was an incredible save, just a sea of bodies. And I remember when he saved that, thinking we're not scoring against this fella today. Like it's gonna take something, a miracle for us to score against this goalkeeper. I think some of that just is you need a little bit of luck at the end of the day. Imagine instead of the goal, just very quickly, the goal where Saliba rushes out like a good centre back should and takes one in the tummy and it's deflected in because the goalkeeper's saving it. Let's be very clear. Um, Instead of that, Odegaard's shot, you think if he just takes a little ricochet and he ends up in the bottom corner, it's one of those, isn't it? So
Mm.
you're right. There's a little bit of luck that you need in these big moments, in these big games, and perhaps Arsenal just at the wrong time for them just didn't get a little bit of luck, which they probably needed.
I mean, it is fine margins. It is fine margins, but again, you can work as hard as you can, but you need that rub of the green. I mean, sometimes some people sort of say that if you're really good, you don't need the look. You take the look out, and there is a truth in that. But just going back to the managers now, uh, Liverpool, uh, Klopp, an iconic a wonderfully successful manager at Liverpool when Slot's come in, it is the holy grail, the Premier League, and Slot's done it. So this is what I mean about it has an impact. There's something that as I said, it's not something that I would advocate in terms of making a rash decision. But certainly, I think he's been there how long now? 4 years, 5 years as head coach. It's a sufficient time. He's had sufficient support. There's significant investment. There's some very, very good players. What's the difference in terms of points between Liverpool and Arsenal this year? Now, uh, nobody's going to convince me that the difference in points reflects the quality difference. I think that Arsenal have, uh, I can't say as good a side as Liverpool because Liverpool have won the league, so therefore they're the best side, but they're not far off, but certainly not the point difference. So again, I'm sort of thinking, well, you have to have metrics to judge Arteta. Now, I've always viewed him, or at least I've viewed him more recently as a better uh, coach against European sides. I think he plays a type of style of football very reminiscent of maybe Italian football in the 90s and the early noughties. It's quite measured, it's quite conservative. He often has the shackles on. Uh, Maybe that's the problem. Maybe he needs to sort of say, well, look, I've got good players, remove the shackles, be expansive, because certainly the way that he's done things is not worked in terms of trophies. Now you can say that he's getting to uh, the closing stages of tournaments. He's obviously still sort of competing very well for the Premier League, so therefore he's obviously the Arsenal are a serious contender. But it's that missing sort of 5%. How's he going to get it? I think his coaching style, uh, he needs to adapt. And I don't think he is. I think he's developed a coaching style. He's quite conservative. I mean, obviously, as an Arsenal fan, uh, I'm not sure whether you'll agree, but I think he's very conservative. He doesn't. Its intention almost is to not lose a game rather than the other way around. I always like managers who say, right, we're going to win the game. That's what we're going for. There are some coaches. I mean, Mourinho was classic. He always, I think, had that mindset. I'm not going to lose, and then you base your play from that position. Arteta is of a similar frame of mind, and I just sort of think that maybe, as I said, it won't happen. I think he's got a tremendous amount of uh, 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 credit at the Arsenal, so I don't think they'll be asking him to go. You've sort of said that a lot of the fans are still on board, so obviously it's going to be difficult to remove him. But I do like. I mean, I keep on talking about Iriola and what Bournemouth did. I mean, that's a different circumstances, but again, that's a choice that a club has made, thinking that this guy is going to take us to the next level. So I'm one that I would seriously contemplate. Is it time for a change?
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, I don't see it, and it shouldn't be. And I'd be incredibly disappointed if it even came to pass. I mean, look, the Arsenal Football Club is owned by the Kroenkes. Kroenkes recently made a big decision in one of their NBA franchises to fire their coach days before the playoffs started, which is unheard of. Absolutely. They did it because of some internal turmoil, and I remember I think it was the day Arsenal were playing Real Madrid actually that they did it. But the point I'm making is, I don't think they'd ever entertain it for Arteta. And never underestimate you, in my opinion, looking at football the way I do, never underestimate the power of having a good manager at the helm and suggesting just because of our own impatience and lack of I guess, sensitivity just to suggest, well, oh, we can get better and we should be winning this stuff. No, Arsenal shouldn't be winning this stuff. They haven't won this stuff. They haven't won the Champions League. They haven't won the Premier League. It should be hard. It should be difficult. Now, in sport, now you might say I'm being too philosophical here, but defeat is often a story of defeat is often part of the story when it comes to victory and triumph. Sometimes you have to lose time and time and time again. I'm a big believer that that type of adversity, if you keep knocking on the door, one of these days it will open. You've just got to make sure you're competing, make sure you keep improving, addressing your weaknesses. You talk about the fact that he's not perhaps malleable in terms of his flexibility. I think Arsenal were a pretty much of a gung ho team, but he realised that Man City were having such a high standard well, they went back to that four centre backs. If you remember the season when they won the Premier League, the Champions League, and they did the treble, and maybe Arteta thought, if I'm gonna win the league, some of these slack games against maybe mid-table teams, lower mid-table teams, and what have you, I can't be having poor results. So maybe he has gone a bit conservative, which he has. I mean, the stats tell you that. I've been shouting it from the rooftops. In terms of, if you look at the number of games where they've scored 1 or 0 goals, I think it's up to about 19 or something in all competitions or something like that. So you're always then at the behest of a bit of bad luck, a ricochet, a poor a refereeing decision, whatever it may be, to losing points. So that's something he's smart enough to address, in my opinion, in terms of how they want to play moving forward. So I think, look, he's a young coach. People forget that this is his first appointment as a manager. The slot situation, in my humble opinion, he was a little different. I mean, Klopp's removed himself from consideration, so they had to get a
Mm.
coach. That's the first thing, and secondly, the squad was in a good shape. Klopp's obviously a legend at the football club. It was, and you have to give it Liverpool huge credit for securing the right guy with the right security, with the right skills, to then just continue that good work and put his own little spin on it to secure that last 5 or 10%. That's not always going to be the case. So many things have to happen. You've got to trust the ownership to make a good decision. You've got to then have the new guy having enough kind of skills and abilities and experiences and smarts, general smarts, to handle what is an elite level football club, an elite level footballing talent at his disposal, and then manage the big kind of pressures that come with a title run in potentially and with Champions League games. So there's a lot of ifs there. Whereas with Arteta, he's at least proven that he can go the distance. Now, some might say, well, he's not crossed the line in first. Fine. I think that's a fair observation. But he's shown that he can get them to the dance, let's say, if I can call it that, if I can use that analogy. So never underestimate that journey in terms of where you've come from and where you are today. This divine right, I think some Arsenal fans might have, and even some journalists have. There were many articles, not be it just in the Daily Mail, football pundits like Paul Scholes and others, suggesting as though the clock should be ticking. Oh, he's been there a number of years. What does it mean? He's not finishing eighth or seventh or just languishing and getting killed first leg, second legs in the last 16 or not qualifying the group stages. He fell short in the Champions League semi-final. You now sign me up for more of those over the couple of years, because that tells you that your team's bloody consistent. So again, it's a case of not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think Arsenal Football Club will be fine. I think they'll be measured. They'll know what weaknesses that they've got. Don't forget they've got a new director of football slash technical director in Andrea Berta. No doubt he's going to want to make a little bit of noise because he's come on big money himself. I think there's some interesting noises about the type of players that they're interested in. And yes, they have to address the forward situation. That's obvious. They look a really nice outfit, but not clinical enough. Not what I would say is not brutal enough in the final third, where you need killers. You need killers to be able to decide big moments and big games. You can't tell me for the life of me that some of those opportunities, first game, second game, that a true killer's not putting perhaps one or two of those away. So Arsenal are fine. Again, huge disappointment. It was the biggest game I've had as an Arsenal fan in many, many, many years. And of course, when you're one game away from the final, you know this. You're just desperate to be there. You don't even care about the performance. Just even if it's a little bit of luck or whatever, or a bit of bad luck for the opposition, you just want to somehow get to the final, to get to the final dance, where they would have had a chance. It's a great inter team, but they would have had a chance, of course. I think it would have been I think most would have said it's a pick 'em final. I think that would have been fair to say. So yeah, hugely disappointing from an Arsenal perspective. But this rhetoric about Arteta, coming from also yours truly, you needs to stop.
Well, I'm interested to find out what our viewers and listeners, we're not on the radio, so it's viewers, think about this as well. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people who are not Arsenal fans, but it'd be interesting to find out what their thoughts are. You're obviously an Arteta in, and he stays in. I'm not sure when the penny will drop for you. I mean, maybe 2, 3 more years of winning nothing, perhaps might just sort of pick you a little bit, but you make some good arguments. I mean, it is at the end of the day. I'm with sport. I have a different mindset completely because I always sort of say sports about ultimately about winning. It depends on who you are. Now, if you're a Bournemouth, it's a different metric. It's about maybe finishing top 10. If you finish top 10, that's a success. For the Arsenal, the investment, the club, everything about Arsenal at this moment in time, the metric should be winning things. And that's the way that I look at it. I
Yeah,
don't think it's a given right. I think it's the context that I place the Arsenal in.
agreed. I'm not disputing that, Ayub. The only thing I would say is that quite often we've seen this in many sports where there are sometimes perennial second place teams, so to speak. They're always finishing just short, just short. And that's a moniker you have to carry. It's a heavy burden to carry because suddenly you do get accused of, well, yeah, forever the bridesmaid, never the bride. I just genuinely believe, and this is not just me wishful thinking, it's just because I follow all the sports that I could follow up. I understand in a sense of the stories, the kind of adversities that certain teams, certain individuals kind of go through. You think about the famous kind of Roger Federer, always coming up in the French Open final against Rafael Nadal. He wasn't bad on
Mm.
clay. He just kept coming up against the greatest clay court in the history of the game. So he was the second greatest clay court player ever. You could make the argument. And then obviously he obviously breaks through, beats Robin Soderling in the final, and completes the career Grand Slam. The argument I'm just making is sometimes you just got to compete long enough and the door will open. And I'm a big believer in that. They've got top players, they've got a top coach. They're going to address some shortcomings in the summer. The worry is you start to lose some critical players. For me, there's four critical players in that football club right now. I would argue. I would say the Saliba, Rice, Saka, and probably I'd say Gabriel in terms of just that kind of centre back duo, Rice and Saka. That doesn't mean the others are not important. Of course they are. But I just think those four are like those kind of centerpiece type players where you lose one of those, and I don't think you're going to lose Saka, maybe not even Rice for a little while, but you lose one of the two centre backs, suddenly you become a very different team. So that will be the worry. You're right. They're primed, they're ready, they're a good outfit, they're a strong outfit, they've got a good squad. They've got to make it count in these next 24 months, hopefully, with something. But I think they should be there for the challenge, you know?
Well, we'll sort of see next season. Obviously, there's a game this weekend against the champions. So that should be interesting. I mean, obviously, it's a dead rubber, so I'm not sure what sort of side Liverpool will have and what motivations they will have. So really can't put too much emphasis on that game. But enough about the Arsenal. I've indulged you far too long. But before we go, I'll just talk about Leeds a little bit. Uh, and there's a reason for that. We'd secured promotion the week before, but we played on Saturday. And this is maybe the difference, the mindset. We'd already achieved the mission. The mission was accomplished. We were promoted. But virtually every single Leeds United fan wanted first place. And that's the thing. Uh, Whether we won the game or lost the game wouldn't have made any difference in terms of actual accomplishment. We were promoted. But that's the difference because I wanted to A, get 100 points and B, go up as champions. And I think that's the mindset that a lot of the Leeds fans have. We're really, really, in terms of expectations, it's sometimes ludicrous, the expectations that we have. But I like it because I view Leeds United as a big football club. In the Championship, the biggest. When we get to the Premier League, my initial thoughts will just be survival. But that's really what I would expect from fans as well, that you place a context on the side that you support. In the league that we were in, we were head and shoulders, or I expected us to be head and shoulders above everybody else. And that's why the only thing that I was going to be satisfied with was promotion. Yes, absolutely. That's non-negotiable, but first place. And I think that's the mindset that I would want from Arsenal Football Club. That's the way it should be. That it shouldn't just be a case of, all right, we competed well. No, no. For me, if we'd have finished second, I wouldn't have been satisfied.
Yeah, but it's a different dynamic, isn't it?
How
Promotion.
dare you? How dare you?
It's a different. It's a different dynamic. I'll see how your luster lasts next season when you're losing three times a week. But the fact of the matter is that I mean, listen. I hear you loud and clear. Arsenal fans want to win. Arteta wants to win. You can see it. You can see how much it hurt him in the press conference, which is why he made that comment about perhaps being the best team in the league. I can disagree with him in the Champions League. Sorry, I can disagree with him. Ultimately, you've got to win your games. But I'm just saying that if and when you do fall short of your ultimate objective, the response to that cannot be a case of right, everybody out type of. I think that's just irrational. I don't think that's fair. I think you have to just observe and say, have they taken a big step back in the league? Absolutely. Does he deserve criticism for that? He does, because he gets paid the big bucks for overseeing that football club. No issues whatsoever. You've got to be held accountable. I'm just saying the last bit of that accountability can't be, well, you've not been good enough, you've not met your remit, off your pop. That's not the type of football club that I want to support. And like I said, Mikel Arteta has brought this club back to the big time. He deserves a chance to see it through and to kind of bring back the really good times back for this football club, because don't forget what it took to get us back into that particular position. So, like I said, we were nobodies, also Rans for many years under the last years of Wenger, and then obviously under Emery, and even in the early years of Arteta. He's brought us back to meaningful games, and fans shouldn't forget what that means in terms of playing big games on big Champions League nights.
Right, I'm going to have the final word. I mean, this is where the difference is because I, even with Fark, with 100 points, winning the league, I still want him out. That's where I am. But right, as always, thank you so much for your time, Awis.
Thankfully,
Ins
thankfully, calmer heads at Leeds have prevailed.
No, but he did test the waters. The
He did,
chairman
he
did
did,
test
he
the
did,
waters,
he
did he?
did.
And I think people were caught up in the emotion. So I think, but you give him till November, he'll be sat by November. So he's going to be out of his depth. Right. Okay. As always, a pleasure to speak to you. Very insightful from a gooner, a very level-headed gooner. But I'll be intrigued to find out what others think. But ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the next 10 days because it's going to be absolutely gorgeous if you're UK based. So enjoy yourself, have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. Ta-ra for now.